Hi, my name is Alyssa and I'm one of the founders at the Yoga Cooperative Montana. And for today's yoga snack, I'm going to break down downward facing dog. I'm going to introduce some common misalignments that I see and some ways that you can be curious with this pose, whether at home or in a studio practice. I'm also going to show you what it looks like in my body, because downward facing dog looks different in everybody's bodies. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to explore this pose. And then I'm going to offer a couple of variations if downward facing dog is not within your practice or within your wheelhouse for whatever reason. So I'll introduce us, I'll walk us through first by coming into the pose itself. So you can start by, and you can just watch or you can follow along with me. Start by taking your feet about hip distance width apart. And this is where we can already start to be curious, maybe taking our feet as wide as the mat or bringing our feet close together. The palms are pointing towards the front of the mat. And a lot of times you might hear, as far as weight distribution in the hands, as evenly as you can, but if you find some discomfort, focusing that weight on the L of your hand, so the index finger and the thumb. And one of the most common misalignments that I see is a lot of folks dumping their weight into their wrists. So in other words, coming too far forward onto their wrists. And this can give a lot of strain and make this pose really uncomfortable. And so there's a few things that we can do here. You might hear an alignment cue in yoga class of rolling your shoulders down your body and then pushing backwards. And that's going to help you alleviate that pressure. But it might not be within our body's wheelhouse to do that. So my recommendation for you, or for anyone exploring this pose, is to start by always having a deep bend in the knees to where your belly almost rests and pushing your heart back towards your thighs. And then once you notice that the weight has been alleviated from your wrists, then you can start to explore by straightening those heels, trying your best to keep the front of your body, your forearms, and your wrists where they are. So this is what downward facing dog looks like in my body. I have a slight bend in the knees, my feet are wide, and so are my fingers, and my weight is off my wrists. Sometimes I play around with straightening my legs, but it doesn't feel super great in my body, so I don't do that. So that's downward facing dog. Here are some different ways you can explore that pose in different shapes. Child's pose is always a nice modification for downward facing dog, as well as intense puppy pose. So coming up onto the knees and hands reaching towards the front of the mat and heart sinking towards the mat. Perhaps your forehead rests there, but we want to leave our forearms up off the mat because that can provide a nice shoulder stretch. So this is a nice variation if you are someone with a shoulder injury or working on upper body flexibility and strength. One other modification that you can do with downward facing dog is by adding blocks. And this helps create a little bit more space in your shoulders. I might slide a little bit because this mat is a little slippery, so it's something to keep in mind as you explore this modification with props. So it's creating space for me, and allowing me to drop my heels to the mat, which is not necessarily a huge goal. Because I can do that, I'm actually going to step further back. And then using the palms of my hands to push into the block to try and hold them in place. So that's a breakdown of downward facing dog. And just a reminder that any of the cues and any of the modifications that I provided still might not work in your body, and that's okay. It is the pose's job to meet your body, not the job of your body to meet the pose. And if you ever have questions, any of the teachers and instructors at the Yoga Co-op can help break down and provide options for you. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. And we hope to practice with you in the studio or on the video library.